Beyond Emissions podcast. Thanks for joining us. We are going to have an amazing show for you today. Welcome if you're just joining us for the very first time here at Beyond Emissions, a YouTube channel. By the way, like this video, subscribe, and hit that reminder bell in the corner so that you can be a part of the ongoing conversation, our dream, which is let's create a world that is beyond emissions. And not only that, we're living in a world of imagination because not all of this has come to fruition yet. I said yet. The thing is there are technologies that exist that may get us there a lot faster than we might have originally, thought we could do. Some of the technologies out there that are so amazing, that are going to revolutionize our world, exist right now. And we want to explore a lot of that. But the dream, of course, living in a world beyond emissions, we want to imagine, what does that world look like, right? Like when Dr. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, that world did not exist yet. So he was imagining a world and what that world might actually be and what that world might look like. The white boys and black boys and black girls and black boys and black girls could play together. And back then, that was not allowed. Segregation was in full effect. His life was in danger, Dr. King. But he had a dream. He had the courage to have that dream. And I'm not saying that this is the equivalent to that dream. I think that supersedes what we're even doing here. That was on the human heart level. But frankly, the world that we're living in is not sustainable. This future that we're headed towards right now, with the industrialization of everything. Yes, the technologies that have come out of industrialization have got us to the point where we could create technology and policies and different ways of doing things in our world that could lead to a world that is beyond emissions. But in all reality, we have to stop as a people and say, we've got to have our own dream. And we do have a dream here at Beyond Emissions, and that is, what is it going to look like to live in a world that is beyond emissions? Not just with the environment, that's huge, but how about if energy is unlimited and clean? How does that bode for geopolitical issues around the world, people not having to fight over as many resources? It could create an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. It could create a version of world peace, if you will, before Jesus comes back. That's going to be true peace, but until then, we've got to do our best to get along. And one of the best ways we can do that is to figure out a way to make resources more plentiful. And the number one resource in the world is energy. Well, the number one resource is people. But the outside of that, the number one resource is energy. And that's what we fight over. At the end of the day, the positive benefits of creating and moving towards a world an emissions-free future beyond emissions has so many different far-reaching effects beyond just the environment and what we think of when we think of that whole entire dream. So thank you for joining us on this podcast, Beyond Emissions YouTube channel. Again, like this video and subscribe. So today, without further ado, my special guest, I'm Josh Brum, your host, by the way. Our special guest today is Michael Cox, head of engineering at GKN Hydrogen. And I'm going to introduce him here in just a sec, but I want to start off by saying that a lot of technologies that are being discussed are bridges to get us to that beyond emissions future. GKN Hydrogen, they have created a technology. It's so amazing. Metal hydride storage. We'll get into this with Michael here in just a moment. It is revolutionary. It's not just a bridge. The future is right now. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, head of engineering at GKN Hydrogen, Michael Cox. Welcome to Beyond Emissions, sir.
Thank you, Josh. Hey, I appreciate you having me on today, and I look forward to our discussion. And it's hard to follow up with such a great lead-in, but I think you're right. We're going the right place. What we find so compelling about our technology and where we're going today is it is something we can do today. And it subscribes to so many things that people talk about today that what they can do is, especially, different segments of the population, we talk about energy independence. This is a way to get energy independent today. You're not relying on hostile foreign governments. You get off of oil. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing. And of course, you can do this all right now within our own country. So it's a really sort of step change that we can do today, utilizing our technology. Today, you can make things happen now. It's not in the future. And I love what you said is, this is not a bridge technology. This is the technology. We store hydrogen. Hydrogen is element number one for a reason. It is the end game. And the sooner we can go to the end game, the sooner we can all be better for the planet, better for ourselves. I mean, I used to make the analogy that, we have made great strides. I mean, the whole planet has made great strides the last 20 years in, lowering emissions. But it's only been lowering emissions. How about really going to the root of the problem and ending those emissions? That's what we really come to, and that's where we can really make a difference today. And utilizing hydrogen can do that. It's great. I mean, hydrocarbons are a wonderful compound, and they make a lot of wonderful things other than just energy as well. But if you can limit those emissions from power generation, which is the number one source of emissions in the world, and secondary from automobiles and other things, you go again. You keep doubling down on this, and pretty soon you can have an emission-free world. And that's what hydrogen allows you to do. You can't do that with anything else today. And as you said, this is available today, not in some distant future, some hope for cold fusion or something. I mean, all of those things will happen eventually. But this is something we can do today, and especially to inject also energy independence into it today. So we're really looking forward about our discussion today about this technology and how we can move it forward.
Oh, it's beautiful. It is. It is beautiful. It's like looking at a gorgeous sunset and just relaxing and going, that's the technology we're talking about. It's going to put you listeners, Beyond Emissions YouTube channel. Thanks for being here. Michael Cox, head of engineering at GKN Hydrogen, my special guest today for this discussion and a future technology that exists right now. We're going to go further into that. But it's relaxing. It's relaxing. It puts us at ease because there's so many things that are going on in today's world that are tumultuous, just full of just, just lots of war and lots of death and destruction. And we think about that, and we don't generally put that into the mix when we're talking about, clean energy and beyond emissions. We think of, a better environment, climate change. Yes, that's important. But natural resources and energy, Russia invading Ukraine and cutting off the spigot of natural gas to Germany and our European partners and allies, democracies around the world. We, the people, the United States of America, the only real free nation in the world when it comes to our Constitution, where our Constitution, embedded in that Constitution, says what the government can't do to you, not what you can and can't do. And so that kind of freedom, this experiment, the world has been tyranny before the United States of America. And the United States of America has, in its allies and partners, created partnerships of fellow democracies around the world and promoted democracy. I'm not saying that we're without fault and we've never done anything wrong. Lord knows we have. But in this imperfect world before Christ returns, we have to look at the bastion of freedom, the light on that shining light on the hill. We're it. This is it. Ronald Reagan used to say, if we're gone, no one else has anywhere else to escape to. And we look at China And we look at Russia and a lot of the other communist regimes and autocracies around the world, and they are hell-bent on world domination. And they're working on it right now. Since World War II, gold was technically the backdrop for our dollar, creating the world reserve currency that allowed us to be able to spread freedom and to maintain freedom throughout the world. And after the 70s happened, 72 I think it was, Nixon got us off the gold standard. What has backed our dollar and kept our world reserve currency status, allowing that freedom to continue and exist? The free world, they call it. And that's exactly what we are. The United States and all of our allies in the West, we're the free world. The rest of the world is not free. If China right now I would be hauled off to jail by secret police and never be heard from again for just talking about this right now in China. In the United States of America and our allies in Germany, France, and Great Britain, etc., and Canada, and we have the ability to get on this microphone and say what we want to say without fear or reprisal. Okay, so when we look at that freedom that exists in the world, our world reserve currency status is tied to what? Ever since the gold standard was dropped. It's been backed by oil. And that has allowed for dictators around the world to maintain pressures and leverage over us. That it's not a good thing, and it does not bode well for our future. Right now, as we speak, Saudi Arabia is talking with China about accepting the yuan in exchange for all oil transactions or for oil transactions to maybe eventually replace the dollar. Now, all of a sudden, we no longer hold on to that world reserve currency status. It's not a good thing. So we're not just talking about the benefits to the environment. It's our national security. It's the economy. It's the existence of the free world. And so we have to come up with a new way to create this energy. Energy is the backbone of our money, frankly. And so it's not just in the interest of us as a peoples, as a free peoples, to have clean and green energy just for the environment, but our national security and our very existence as a free world is at stake. And technologies like GKN hydrogens, metal hydride storage, and their systems that we're going to discuss today with Head of Engineering Michael Cox from GKN Hydrogen. It is not just a way to get us there maybe potentially in the future, but it's something that we can start instituting right now to wean us off of the Middle East. And well, talk a little bit about that. I'm right, aren't I, Michael?
Yeah, Josh. I mean, you're pretty much right on. I mean, adopting, more of a hydrogen economy will give the world freedom, because it's something you can do yourself. You're not reliant on a third party halfway around the world to supply that hydrogen. And, the reality is, and the unfortunate reality is that, most wars have been caused by resources in one way or the other. This is important as we move, people realize as we move toward a hydrogen economy, you're presenting your own ability to manage your own economy and to move forward. Because right now, I mean, we all love batteries. Batteries do wonderful things for us. But unfortunately, lithium and cobalt and all these items that are used to make the batteries are just the new oil. You still are heavily reliant on often unfriendly sources throughout the world to acquire those raw materials. Whereas our technology uses common, everyday materials, and I often say, and this is true, that our technology is made from Chevrolets and Subarus. It's just reclaimed metals. And at the end of its life, guess what? You can make more Chevrolets and Subarus out of the same material if you want to be. So it's infinitely sustainable, okay? You don't have to go to a third party and obscure part of the world to harvest it. And you will have your own energy independence. So the beauty about our technology is you can do it wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you're on a mountaintop or in the middle of the desert. You can utilize hydrogen, make hydrogen, store hydrogen, and use it as you see fit, all without creating emissions. And I think, I've been in hydrogen a long time. And, although I'm very, extraordinarily concerned about climate change and what humans undoubtedly have, a very significant impact on that. In the early days, it was, there was a lot more climate deniers out there. So, the way I talk about it, much in the way that you do here today, is it is beyond emissions. I'm not talking about just CO2. Emissions in general. Why do you want emissions? And I would say, does anyone think smoking is good for you? Does anyone on the planet still think that? Well, it's no different. Smoking for humans is the same way as generating enormous emissions on the earth. That can't possibly be good in the end. So why not bypass all these sort of, emission reduction technologies, go right to element number one that provides that pathway and the ability to provide clean, green energy today. And you can get rid of all those other technologies that along the way that cost a tremendous amount of money and are questionably effective.
And
why not go in element one?
And hydrogen, proponents out there are going to be excited about the how. We're talking about the why right now. Why do we need this amazing technology? But Michael Cox, head of engineering with GKN Hydrogen, today on our program, Beyond Emissions YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Thanks so much for being here, Michael. It's obviously we're talking about the why. Why do we need this type of technology right now? But the how, the number one, objection that we see, whether it's in a social media post on LinkedIn from someone or just in a coffee shop, is hydrogen, it's explosive, or hydrogen, you have to go and get it out of oil and it's expensive and you have to transport it in giant tanks and believe it or not. Yes, that's been the case so far. It's been cost prohibitive, but GKN has created and has patented a metal hydride storage technology, like a sponge almost, that is all done at low pressure. All of the hydrogen is created on site, not trucked in. It's created by renewables, that is wind or solar on site. And well, you know what? Let's go to there. We've been talking about the why. Michael, let's talk a little bit about your technology. I know that our listeners have been sitting on the edge of their seats. Go for it.
Yeah, well, I think, thank you, Josh. There's probably a couple of things people should know up front about us as well, is that, GKN is almost a 270-year-old company. So we're not just a conventional startup that, came out of the wilderness and, thinks this technology is great. And this company does one thing, is we make powdered metals, which that sounds, kind of rather boring on the surface. Powdered metals, what does that have to do with anything? Well, powdered metals are utilized at every plane, every car, and half the stuff you use in your home every single day. GKN is the largest supplier of powdered metal components and powdered metal itself to industries throughout the world. So if you own a car or ever been on a plane, our technology is making that happen. So it's our expertise with powdered metals, which are often used, just to make almost like casting, except it's made from the powdered metal, which is incredibly strong and durable. But it's a new way to manufacture very intricate metal parts. So utilizing this technology and understanding how powdered metal technology works, we've known for quite some time and that hydrogen also can form a metal hydride when it's in contact with certain types of metal. Now, the metal, this is why we say, metal hydride technology. So what we have is, we have this unit. It basically, most of them come in either a 10 or 20-foot shipping container style box, and it's powdered metal inside. And when you interact hydrogen with a specific recipe of of iron and titanium, the hydrogen sticks to the powder and forms what we call a metal hydride. Now, it's not a crystal, okay, but you can sort of think of it in, a very simplistic way, kind of like that. So it forms a solid, which is, wonderfully strange how it can do that. Now, metal hydride technology has been known for a long time. That technology is not unique necessarily, but it's the way that we produce it that makes it work forever, essentially. After, the nice thing is metal hydride technology essentially, can go through endless amounts of cycles, so you can take it up and down as much as you want to, totally deplete it, restore it again, and it'll continue to work, which is exactly what you cannot do with batteries. We do things with metal hydride technology that you could never do with a battery. So do they do some things, in a similar kind of way? Yeah, they both store energy, but in a different way. And whereas a battery, typical battery will last 7 to 10 years, our life cycle is, 30 years is not uncommon. So let's get back to what the metal hydride, really is. As I mentioned earlier, it is a mixture of iron and titanium, which are widely available, just commodity materials. I mean, titanium sounds exotic, but it's actually not very exotic at all. You find titanium in every brand of paint on the market. That's how common titanium is. So we put the elements together in a crucible, we melt them, and then we grind them to make a certain metal powder out of it. Now, once the powder has been established, then we do a few things to it, and mostly about the processing to put it inside of our units. And once those are inside of our units, they can, capture hydrogen in this sort of almost like a crystalline form, what I'm saying is solid state. Now, what the beauty of this is, it's incredibly stable. Hydrogen is wonderful and has been around obviously for a long time, but it is explosive when it's in gaseous form. It's easily explosive. And, that's why compressed hydrogen, can be a little bit dangerous, and it's not danger-free, that's for sure. But when hydrogen is in a solid state form, it's incredibly safe and stable. In fact, even once the material has absorbed hydrogen, you could take this out and just place it on your desk. Nothing happens to it because it is a solid. I know it's probably really strange to imagine how hydrogen can be a solid. I mean, it sounds almost like alchemy or something, but you can do it when it interacts with certain metals. And so it's at very, very low pressure, and it's at ambient temperature. It is completely benign.
And the low pressure part of it, Michael Cox from GK and Hydrogen on Beyond Emissions YouTube channel right now. Josh Brum, your host. I'm so thankful you're here, Michael. At low pressure absorption, and we haven't even got to the fact at the beginning of the process, this is all created by renewables through electrolyzers. So it's on site. It's amazing. But at low pressure, what does that equal? Efficiency. Efficiency going in on the charge and efficiency going out, the discharge into the fuel cell. Basically, how much efficiency is lost in this process? Nearly zero, correct?
That's correct. Whatever you put into our system is what comes out, which is very unique in its own way. I don't want to get overly techie here, but the systems are designed to work with, we call it PEM ecosystem, proton exchange membrane. So you have an electrolyzer on the front end that makes the hydrogen. Then you store the hydrogen within our metal hydride technology system. And then when you want the hydrogen, you just take it out, and you can either go to a fuel cell or a jet turbine or even a reciprocating engine that can burn hydrogen. And that's also one of the beauties of our system is it can do multiple use cases all simultaneously. You could do them all. You could have all three, most conventional technologies connected to the end of the system, and they'll all work just the same. So that is the beauty of it as well, because we say, we're storing molecules, not just purely energy. So that's why we can go so long. Where you think about a battery, that typically a battery duration is no more than 4 hours or maybe a little bit more. So battery duration is measured in hours. our duration to be able to supply energy is measured in days and weeks. So this is a massive step change. Like even one of our small systems can operate, say at 14 kilowatts or so for 140 hours, days, days worth of power. And then our big systems are essentially unlimited. You just add more containers and you get more power. And you can go on and on and on. And the reason it is sustainable because it is molecules and not just storing energy. So you crank up the molecules, a little bit of heat, and the molecules are released and your power is made. So it's a very simple technology in the way that it works. But of course, it took a person a long time to come up with how to do this. And as I said, GKN is a company. We produce only metal powders. It's the only thing we do. It's just, the end products are a little bit different. Sometimes they're aircraft parts or sometimes they're automotive parts or even automotive drive systems. But the same exact technology of this $12 billion company is what is used in the metal hydride storage technology. So, we have proprietary technology. We're going to be here tomorrow and 20 decades from now because that's who we are. We've already demonstrated that in the past. So you can be rest assured that the technology is going to be there and there's going to be support for this technology as well. And it's only going to grow over time. And this is a unique capability, storing hydrogen as a solid at low pressure and ambient temperature. It just doesn't exist anywhere else.
No, it doesn't. And I think of the challenge we're faced with right now, electrical vehicle charging, the infrastructure not ready for the 2030 mandate in California, frankly, mm-hmm. and the utilities, they have a monopoly here. You talked about energy independence. How many entrepreneurs are going to be able to utilize GKN Hydrogen's metal hydride storage systems? And I mean, frankly, setting up the gas stations of the future without having to rely on the grid. I mean, this is a reality, right? Electrical vehicle charging stations, entrepreneurs, if you're listening right now, okay, this is a real opportunity for you to get involved and make a lot of money and help a lot of people with GKN's technology. Talk a little bit about that electrical vehicle charging conundrum that we're in right now. Not so much a conundrum with GKN entering the arena, huh?
Yeah, you're right, Josh. I mean, one thing that we say is we provide distributed energy. That means you can have it anywhere you want it. In fact, right now, we're installing a unit out in the middle of the Mojave Desert off of the grid because it works there and it can work anywhere. We're also doing an installation in high on a mountain top in the Alps, completely off of the grid because that's what we can do. Anywhere you need power, we can provide it. And there are a few manufacturers that have contacted us, and we are installing remote vehicle chargers in complete wilderness, completely off the grid. So wherever you need power, we can do it. And we can do it with remote. We can supply those remote car chargers with the power they need to, go ahead and charge the cars of today and the future. And that's a very, very unique thing that really no one else can do. And as I mentioned, people say, well, we can just put batteries out there and they can charge them. That's great if you only have a few cars, only 2 or 3 cars to charge up. But what if you need power for weeks? There's not a battery that's capable of doing that. It won't be for a long time, if ever, when you could use our technology today to do this. There's no waiting. You can do it absolutely today. So, one of our specialties is definitely doing distributed power, distributed energy, or distributed hydrogen. Wherever you need it, that's where we can put it.
Yeah. You
don't need it.
I go to Costco, Michael. I go to Costco and I'm in line to get gas, and there's 50 cars ahead of me, and there's a nonstop trail of trucks pulling up to pour more gas into the main tanks. Like this is no longer, economically for the environment, this is not sustainable. And GKN Hydrogen's distributed technology allows for the democratization, if you will, of energy, no longer in the hands of the fuel companies, no longer in the hands of the public utilities that call themselves public, but they're not. This now puts that power in the hands of the people. Forgive me, power to the people, right? This really makes energy independence for all of us a real possibility, huh?
Yeah, it is, as you mentioned earlier, this is something you can do today, but we do have, think in very urban areas, this is just as appropriate for extremely urban areas as remote areas, and I'll tell you why. It sounds odd. Why would you need this in an urban area? Isn't there electricity around? Yeah, there is, but with the advent of electric cars, when there are so many in many places, and we've already done some of these installations, especially in newer buildings, when everyone gets off work, so they get off work at 5 or 6 p.m., they go home, and then everyone wants to plug in their charger all at the same time to the car. The electrical grid cannot handle that, especially in older urban areas. There's just not the infrastructure to do it. There's not enough power. There's not enough lines. So what developers are doing is they are installing our system in their buildings, and they are specifically there to power EV chargers. So when everyone comes home at night and wants to plug in their car, they can. So there's not an issue with the grid going down, brownouts. And you can do the same here as well. I mean, especially in California, we have known brownouts and rolling blackouts and that sort of thing. And those are often in distributed areas out further. You can install our hydrogen power blocks at, say, a substation and power those places that may have to go into rolling blackout. You wouldn't have to do that anymore. We can supply megawatts at one time to power cities. So that's a very unique prospect as well. So yeah, urban areas where there's not enough power, or it's difficult to get it, you can use our technology. Or even a rural area that may be subject to blackouts, and of course that's also when wildfires in California are also a very big problem. You can still supply power from our units to a substation back to the grid, and it could make rolling blackouts something of the past.
And who has a phone on their wall anymore from the phone company, just a landline? Who has one? Nobody. And eventually this is the same you don't see payphones out anymore. I mean, this is that disruptive, but in a good way. Could you imagine your life without that convenience of having that in your back pocket or in your purse at any given time? And, I could just imagine a scenario where counties, this solution should be brought before county supervisors to vote on. This solution should be brought to city councils and municipalities. This is a real opportunity. Imagine the local citizenry being their own utility, collective utility. Imagine a city, a town, a county having ample amounts of GKN hydrogen, metal hydride energy storage, renewable energy stations stacked in a quantity required for the energy needs. I mean, just like the phone on the wall, I mean, the utilities, they might go out of business with something like this.
I think that's a great analogy, Josh. I mean, this is just as disruptive to the power sector as cell phones were in the 90s. Suddenly, you used to be tethered to the wall, and that was it. But now you can have distributed power or hydrogen wherever you need it. And this is something that is, incredibly unique to us and incredibly unique to this technology. So it's just as disruptive to the power sector as it is to as cell phones were to the telecom industry. And it's new. I mean, it's new, but it's proven technology, and we already have a lot of deployments throughout the world already, and it's only growing as we're building out our manufacturing capability to a higher degree. We're already making plans to have another factory here in the U.S. and to be able to meet that demand. But it is a way to avoid so many problems that we've had to suffer through for decades. that can be solved by hydrogen and this metal hydride storage technology.
And if I'm an entrepreneur coming on the scene right now and I'm listening to Michael Cox, head of engineering from GKN Hydrogen on the Beyond Emissions podcast, if I'm listening right now and I've got an entrepreneurial spirit, I'm thinking to myself, Katie, bar the door. I mean, what can we do with this? There's a lot of money to be made as well. This is going to be an economic boom as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It enables technology and even services for the future that weren't even contemplated just a few years ago. I mean, can you imagine, you're going out in the middle of a hobby, and it reminds me of some old cartoon, from a long time ago, that suddenly this, Wile E. Coyote comes up on an oasis or something in the desert. Well, this is your power oasis. Nothing like this has ever been available in the past, and it is truly transformative, and it can happen today.
Now, obviously, you don't have to have the fuel cell be your transformer, if you will, of the hydrogen coming out of the metal hydride storage to create the electricity. There are other ways that this hydrogen can be discharged for other purposes right now for existing technologies, which makes it multifaceted. But let's get into the world of fuel cells, because on each of your systems there is a fuel cell, and one of the great benefits to a fuel cell is you're creating electricity, but also heat. And what else comes out of the tailpipe? Water, right?
Yeah, just water, just clean water. This is, as I mentioned before, one unique component to our technology is you can service, as we say, different use cases simultaneously. So, yeah, we can supply hydrogen to a reciprocating engine, what would be conventionally like a backup generator on diesel. We can supply those with fuel. Or a jet turbine, which is, most people don't necessarily realize it, but most power from utilities is actually generated by a jet turbine. Like you see on an aircraft, but it's tied to a generator. And of course, obviously the fuel cell. But yeah, what does come out of a fuel cell is oxygen. That's not a bad thing. And clean water as well. So you can definitely sort of harness these things together and make them work. And as you aptly mentioned, heat also. So if you can utilize the heat, especially think about this in cold climates, you're getting sort of another free bonus of being able to utilize that heat. So there's so many, facets to the hydrogen economy and the use of hydrogen make it exceptionally attractive to either entrepreneurs or even homeowners, for that matter, not to mention, obviously, industry, which, a lot of different processes and industrial capacity can utilize heat. So there are so many grand things about this that just simply make it work.
As a business owner, one of the biggest problems that a business owner will have is to forecast their costs, especially out years, right? And it's all a variable. It's a moving target when they're dealing with their energy costs. Even if they've invested in solar, then California comes out with the utilities with NEM 3 and starts, making that not feasible as well from the original investment. And so, bringing in a technology like what GKN Hydrogen has created can allow them to start to look at there's an upfront investment, but now they have the ability to forecast their cost, and that cost will continue to go down year after year after year. After that investment is made, right?
Yeah, Josh, I think that's a great observation, because especially in industry, I've been in this industry a long time and done a lot of different type of projects, but usually one of the most overlooked components of a project, or one of the killing components of a project, is, okay, this is a great idea. We want to build such and such here, and we're going to have a factory to do this and do that. But often, although there's two of the three things you need are there for a successful business, extraordinarily expensive power can kill a project and economic development. So this enables you to forecast for the future. You know exactly what your power costs are going to be. And especially even things like, simple things you may not realize use staggering amounts of power, is fast food restaurants. I mean, this is a very, simplistic example, but they use colossal amounts of electricity. And being able to supply power to those, even those small businesses can have exceptional benefits, just to your economics, not to mention your emissions profile. And of course, those gains only increase on the larger the scale that you make it. So you can even have, a steel factory, things of that nature. So, hydrogen power is the way to go. And our technology from GKN Hydrogen allows that to occur in a very simple way that's very economic and can give you long service life. One thing that we talk about frequently is, especially in regard to batteries, but even other other hydrogen storage technologies, is we have a very low operating and maintenance cost for the systems as well, because it has been engineered to be sort of independently smart, all on its own. It's like an inherent smartness. And this goes along with its inherent safe technology that's available nowhere else from any other company or any other technology.
Yeah, and the input, creating the hydrogen on site, that is revolutionary because, yes, I'm seeing Cummins is coming out with electrolyzer stations. There is a lot of investment being made in creating clean hydrogen, renewable right there on site, as opposed to getting it from fossil fuels and other methods, which have been the status quo thus far. The number one objection, making it not realistic. But, when you're using renewables, whether they be wind or hydro or solar, frankly, solar panels can be utilized rather than being the energy producers. To just go into an inverter and then power a home or a business or a city or what have you, or the grid or whatever it is. Now, right there on site, they're still used, but for a different purpose, to change water into hydrogen with these electrolyzers on site. Renewable energy is still, solar, for example, is still a big player and a partner in making this happen with GKN's solution, right?
Yeah, and that is one unique thing about our technology is, you can provide power from a lot of different sources, whether it be solar or hydropower or even nuclear for that matter. But we can take power from anything and turn it into hydrogen from that power and store it safely and do it today at a very moderate cost. So, not only we talked about, on the back end, we can make power using like a reciprocating engine, a fuel cell, or a gas turbine. We can do the same kind of on the front end. And we can work effectively with any brand of electrolyzer that's out there. So there are loads of brands out there, whether it be, Cummins or Teledyne or Plug Power. It doesn't really matter whose it is. We can utilize that hydrogen and put it in safe storage again today.
What a spirit of collaboration, Mike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very pleased. I mean, as you can imagine, when providers of some of these electrolyzers, studied us and realized what we can do, I guess we have no shortage of suitors. I guess you could say it's a good place to be because we are the only ones of purveyors of this type of technology.
I think of water. The electrolyzers have to, utilizing renewable energy sources or any energy source, as was just described. Michael Cox, head of engineering for GKN Hydrogen, here today on the Beyond Emissions podcast YouTube channel. Like this video and subscribe. So the electrolyzers separate out the hydrogen, storing it in the metal hydride system under very low pressure, very safe for long periods of time, losing no efficiency. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Now, I have to talk about this because I live in Central California, United States of America, the breadbasket of the world. We're ag, and we're running out of water. Now, water being the primary source that these electrolyzers are drawing from to separate out that hydrogen. Is that a factor, and does this help or hurt that situation with the drought?
Yeah, it's really not that impactful to us in the way that one, it uses a actually remarkably small amount of water to generate the hydrogen. But the hydrogen can kind of go in a loop. So once you have a bit of hydrogen, a bit of water on hand, you can sort of run this through a loop and continually extract hydrogen from it. I mean, it does need relatively clean water to operate most efficiently, but there are technologies that would work in symbiosis with our technology to also help improve water quality as well. And because they all need, and what's better than utilizing green power to be able to clean up water in this state? So this could be a real boon to that as well and help enable those technologies that clean up water, an ag runoff. Um, it would be difficult to say that. How can you say that's not a fantastic thing?
Right.
So using these technologies in a symbiotic relationship do have great additional promise for the future.
Every
And
city has a wastewater treatment plant, right?
that's right. And we can utilize, after it goes through treatment, of course, some, the water that comes out there, but we can also, you know, help push this along because what most people don't realize is that even conventional power plants use staggering amounts of water, absolutely staggering amounts of water. So we don't use that much water in the system to generate hydrogen. Imagine if we could offset those by using something that uses far less water. How much more water we'd have for everyone else out there.
Right, right. And the ratio, I think you mentioned on our phone call the other day, the ratio of the water that goes in versus the water that comes out the tailpipe on the other end of the fuel cell is about a 2-to-1 ratio, right? So 50% of the water that went into the process is still available to be recycled back to
That's
the
right.
beginning.
That's right, Josh. It still comes out, and the water is still very clean. There's no emissions runoff. Much like when you look at bottled water. Okay, when bottled water comes into a plant, like it goes through a few processes. On the backside, you may emit some additional water that just has a little bit of higher mineral content. That's all. But there's nothing wrong with it. It just has the way as far as persons literally taste. Humans like water content with some amount of minerals in it. So it would have just maybe a little bit more minerals in it than conventional tap water. But it's still clean water. It can be, utilized for any number of processes or even agriculture if you wanted to, or just run it back through the system.
And your systems, GKN Hydrogen, Head of Engineering, Michael Cox on Beyond Emissions podcast with us today. Your systems, I'm looking at the sheets that are available at GKN Hydrogen's website for your Medi, your Mini, and your Mega. And as I look at these sheets, I see coming out of the fuel cell electricity, H2O water. We described that.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned heat. And I'm thinking immediately of the stranglehold that Russia has had on Europe for natural gas, primarily a lot of it for heating purposes. And the freezing temperatures that are coming across Europe, and how a technology like this can really blunt and thwart some of the thugs and their efforts to attack freedom-loving peoples around the world by shutting off these resources. What an amazing opportunity for Europe and other nations to break themselves from the chains of these tyrants, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most unique things about our technology is, during all these processes, you do generate heat. And in fact, our very first project a number of years ago was a location where they could use, heat for heating, because especially in cold climates. So it was in a very cold climate. You can use it for, a home or a business and utilize that heat throughout the winter as a byproduct. It's free heat. Free heat. So that is a tremendous, benefit to one of our systems as well, especially in a cold climate where you actually, you generally can use the heat as it is generated. So I lived in Alaska for a long time, of course, as well, and heat is really needed there. So you can connect the system to like a boiler system, which is pretty common for hot water system in houses, both in Europe and the cold locations in the U.S. Utilize that free heat. It costs you nothing, and you can do it again today.
Yep. Yep. It's not a bridge. It is something that we can do right now. Right now. We don't have
Yeah.
to wait.
Yeah,
And
it is quite remarkable that how far we've come in a relatively short amount of time. But, I go back to, some of my original statements is, you know, hydrogen is element number one for a reason. It is the end game, and we can utilize it today. And, other companies will be, hope to join this efforts in the future, but including, what is conventional, oil and gas companies. You'd be surprised how much interaction we have with them, because the more, let's say, the more progressive, or maybe just the more forward-thinking energy companies, oil and gas companies, they see themselves as energy providers, not just oil companies. And that's a step change as well. What happens today is frequently the gas that's produced in like an oil field, a lot of the gas is just flared. That means it's burned. They get nothing for it. It's just burned, and the CO2 is sent off into the atmosphere.
right.
But they could take that gas instead and separate it, separate the hydrogen, because, oil and gas is a hydrocarbon, hence hydrogen is part of it. Separate the hydrogen from it, and we can store that hydrogen for later use on an industrial scale. So, like you said, more forward-looking entrepreneurial companies see this as like, wow, this is really amazing. We can actually become, part of the hydrogen economy. We think maybe conventional oil and gas companies would not want to be a part of this. Well, he said the ones that are a little more forward thinking absolutely want to be a part of it, because they do see themselves more as energy providers instead of just purely oil and gas providers.
Right. Right. And, I think of the story, I read it recently in Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. He talks about Kodak and how Kodak had the patent for digital photography decades before it was out on the market. And they were so afraid of losing out on their film sales that they held it at bay and they were able to, for a decade or so, keep it rolling along, keep us all doing the click and pulling the film out of our cameras and everything. And they were able to kind of hold that at bay a little bit, and they were able to license the technology, but eventually they became irrelevant in that sector. And it was because they failed to realize that rather than hide this, we need to be the innovators with this technology. And that's kind of like what you're talking about. Instead of becoming a hydrocarbon company only, we need to be an energy company and embrace this instead of being a victim of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that, there are a few companies that are better equipped to be able to, look at hydrogen, develop hydrogen, and dispense it throughout the nation or internationally than what is a conventional oil and gas company right now. And I do believe that the more forward-looking companies will see this and will push this forward. And I'm hoping sometime in my lifetime I see whatever the big four companies now that are pushing oil and gas will be pushing hydrogen. That's my dream.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you share the same dream as I and our audience of living in a world that is beyond emissions. And what is it going to look like? And how are we going to get there? It's technologies that exist right now. GKN Hydrogen, Head of Engineering, Michael Cox. Wow, this has been an amazing program. I'm so glad you came on the show today to share with our audience, and I'm so glad to have met you and know you. And in my future endeavors in the world of beyond emissions and in the world of what I'm going to be doing and in promoting technologies like yours, I look forward to working with you in the future in ways we haven't even discussed to get this into the market ASAP. And I hope when we get off the phone here that we can talk a little bit about that as well. Before we go, this has been an amazing program. And listeners, if you want to just rewind, go back. This discussion is available on demand at the Beyond Emissions YouTube channel. But Michael Cox, You're not shy about sharing. You're spreading the gospel of metal hydride storage and what GKN has created here and what we need to do with it to get to that world beyond emissions. You're open for further discussions as well as our listeners and people who are chiming in here would like to contact you and learn about more. Learn more about GKN Hydrogen's technology that's not a bridge. The future is now, man, right? Just like Garth said, live in the now, man. Well, we are living in the now, right? How can our listeners contact you and learn more and become partners with us in this mission, like what GKN Hydrogen is doing right now to get to that world beyond emissions?
Well, thank you, Josh. I mean, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on today and sort of share the gospel of hydrogen and GKN hydrogen, what we can do today. And I look forward, coming back again, next year and talking about some of the new offerings which we have not announced, which basically, technology is getting better and better and better. But the easiest way to find out more about us is just go to gknhydrogen.com. And there's a few different links there for, interaction, learn more, contact us directly. It's all on our website and very easy to interact. And, myself or our staff will follow up with you.
Awesome. Well, God bless you, Michael, and thanks for coming on Beyond Emissions. Hang on for our engineers. Well, it's just me, myself, and I. So I'll be right with you and really appreciate you taking your time. I know you're very, very busy. So just thank you very much for taking your time and explaining all of this to us today, sir.
My pleasure, Josh. Thank you very much.
Awesome. GKNhydrogen.com, GKNhydrogen.com. Go there today. The future is right now. Metal hydride storage at very low pressures too. You actually will not lose any of your efficiency. Other energy storage methods out there, which we are proponents of all these other different technologies as well. But I have to say this is at the top. GKN Hydrogen's metal hydride storage, of which they are specialists in, 270-year-old company. They're not going anywhere, folks. And we're excited to be able to bring this type of technology to the forefront for us to focus on, because we can not just have a bridge, we can get there right now. Energy independence is something that's important to us. I know around the world we want to see this happen, but I'm thinking as an American, that's where I was born, United States of America. So I'm thinking of America and our allies and freedom-loving allies and friends around the world that we have to break from the yoke of not just for environmental reasons. That's important. Absolutely. Climate change is real, and just shoving tons of carbon daily, millions of barrels of carbon up into the atmosphere is not good for the overall cycles here on Earth. It just isn't. I don't care how you look at it, what you believe in. That's just a fact. Too much of anything is bad, right? Well, not with hydrogen. It's the most abundant element in the universe. Okay, not planet Earth, the universe. And we can create it right here, renewable energy wise, independently. So you don't need to be under the yoke of the energy utilities. You don't need to be under the yoke of relying on Russia to send you your natural gas. You don't need to be under the yoke of different types of technologies that have negatives like nuclear and others. Although those are all possible to be utilized to create hydrogen for these GKN metal hydride storage systems, renewable energy on site. Imagine, GKN hydrogen systems set up in every town and every city in America. Imagine now that just to pay for this upfront investment, you say every citizen has a little sales tax or something. And that can just be for the ongoing maintenance of the system and the upfront investment. But in doing so, it can create predictability for businesses. It can lower cost of energy for every family out there. It can dovetail itself with solar and renewable energy sources to collaborate with these existing companies and systems not to compete with them. So, I mean, at the end of the day, economics, environment, national security, it really checks off every single box. We're so glad that Michael Cox, head of engineering from GKN Hydrogen, joining us on the program today. Thank you for listening and making us number one right here at Beyond Emissions YouTube channel. Okay, ultimately, we have a dream. What is a world that is beyond emissions? What does it look like? What does that world look like to you? Put it in your comment section there at our YouTube channel, Beyond Emissions YouTube channel. Go to the comment section and put down there, what does it mean to you? What does a world that is beyond emissions look like to you? And if you have some great ideas, we're an open forum here. You know, how are we going to get there? Obviously, I think that a technology that exists today like GKN Hydrogen's metal hydride storage is just an amazing way to take a gigantic leap. You know, Neil Armstrong, you know, this is one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Like, that's what GKN Hydrogen has created, man, right here and right now. So excited, the technologies. Coming up this week, Will Harris from White Oak Pastures is going to be on Beyond Emissions podcast, regenerative farming and how industrial farming is destroying the environment, not just our health, and how regenerative farming is a key to restoring farming back to the normal life cycles of how God intended our earth to work and life cycles to work and all these different processes, and how it actually, regenerative farming, the way that Mr. Harris and his team at White Oak Pastures has been leading the way in, actually will reduce the carbon footprint. The cow is not evil. Beef is not evil. It does not industrial farming is what's causing the problem. Regenerative farming is the solution. So coming up this week, regenerative farming and how that can help us get to a world that is beyond emissions with Will Harris from White Oak Pastures. Excited. Also as well, we've got another, Dr. James Clergen is going to be joining us this Friday. Flywheel energy storage. It's a technology that's thousands of years old. Using a flywheel to store energy storage. He's got a new innovative company called Kineticore, and he'll be on the program this week too. Excited. We are headed towards, matter of fact, like, you know, from GKN Hydrogen, Michael Cox said, not just a bridge to get us there, but technology that exists right now to a world that is beyond emissions. God bless. Thanks for joining us. Again, make sure you like this video, subscribe, share as well. Share, and make sure you send your comments, be a part of the ongoing conversation. Hit that reminder bell in the corner too, so that you can continue to join us for all of our future episodes. Beyond Emissions Podcast. Have a great day.